Hi, this is Craig Stocks. I'm here for Utah Desert Remote Observatories. You can find us online at utahdesertremote.com, and we'd love to talk to you about hosting your telescope at our remote observatory, or possibly hourly rental of one of our telescopes to go after a special target of your choice. Today I want to talk about a common problem that a lot of us struggle with, and that is getting dust motes or dust spots on the image. And I want to go over what I think is the best way to deal with those in Photoshop. So before I get too far into this, I should probably talk about why I have this image that has dust spots on it when I should be using flats. And I guess the answer is that I do use flats. In this case, the flats were kind of older and didn't quite match the dust that had accumulated on the camera. And I made the mistake, I guess, of cleaning the sensor partway through this project. So now I have a clean camera and I need to shoot new flats, but I've lost the opportunity to create flats that match these dust spots. So in this particular case, that's why I have dust spots on images and no opportunity to shoot flats that match the dust spots, and I don't have any flats in the library that would match these. Yeah, that's just one reason why you might have a situation where you have dust spots or dust motes on your image that you just don't have the opportunity to fix with flat frames. So when that happens, this is a way to approach fixing them. So I've got the image, actually two different versions of the image here. I've got one with the stars separated on a separate layer because I normally will do a starless workflow. And I also have a version of this where it's all on one layer, so we can talk about how you do this if you don't use a starless workflow. And just to put it in perspective, this is an RGB image with not a whole lot of data because I was really exposing just for the stars. But a lot of times I will process a full RGB just for the heck of it. You usually get this rather dark and a lot of, mostly red from the hydrogen. But this is the Lion Nebula, and there is a lot of detail there. This is what it looks like in a narrowband image with an HSO color palette. So just for perspective, that's what we're dealing with. So let's start, because it's probably easier to explain, let's start with the version where we have the stars separated out into a separate layer. And these were created using Russell Croman's Star Exterminator and with the unscreened stars option checked. And what that means is then if I save those as individual layers, I have a stars layer and a background layer, and I put the stars back in using this screen blending mode, which is a special way of blending the layer above with whatever is below it. And I can turn that layer off and we can see just the background, and you can see there's really quite a few of these dust motes, and some are lighter than the surrounding background, some are darker than the surrounding background, and there are some areas that are just kind of glow or halos from the stars, but there are quite a few dust spots. And you'll notice when we turn the stars back on, most of them are actually somewhat hidden. They're still there, it's just that our eyes don't perceive them nearly as well. But when we turn off the star layer, they become very visible. So I want to talk about really 2 or 3 different ways of dealing with these in a starless layer, and then we'll talk about how to deal with it in that combined image, because some of it will be similar and some of it doesn't work. A lot of these areas are in areas with really no detail behind it, or at least no apparent detail. So we can use a tool to just quickly overlay these dust motes with some of the surrounding dark sky. I see a lot of people using the clone stamp tool, and I think a better tool to use is the healing brush. And there are two advantages to that. One, you can use it on a separate layer, but you can with the clone stamp tool also. The bigger advantage is that it blends the area that you're healing with the surroundings, as well as using the source area as a template. Other than that, functionally you use it about the same way you use the clone stamp. It's just that it's much more forgiving and gives you a much softer result. So I like to do it on a separate layer. So I'm going to come down to the second from the right icon to create a new layer. So we have a new blank layer sitting above our starless layer, but below the star layer, which I currently have turned off. And we'll go to the healing brush, and if I click and hold, the second one down is the healing brush tool. That's the one we want to use. And it works like the clone stamp tool, that you would press and hold the Alt key to choose an area of the image to use as a source sample. Click and release, and then move over the area that you want to heal and just click and paint. And it uses that source area as the template, but it also does some content-aware blending so that it really kind of blends in and keeps the noise pattern the same, and it really just does a very quick, easy way of hiding those blended areas. So just that easy, we can get rid of them. And that got rid of most of the bad ones. Looks like there's another one here. And I don't know how well these show up on YouTube, but that has pretty well gotten rid of most of the really objectionable ones. And if the sampled source that you used initially didn't seem to work well, you can always grab a different area and go over it again. Since it's on a separate layer, we can turn it off and on and see just a very quick before and after. So it did a really nice job. And of course we can turn the stars back on, and we have a nice, pretty much finished image. And of course the thing that you would typically do is you would want to process the background separately from the stars. So for instance, we might add a levels adjustment layer, and notice I've added it above the corrections but below the stars. So it's only going to affect below this adjustment layer. And I might want to do something like darken the sky a little bit, maybe brighten the nebula a little bit. We might even tweak the color of the background by targeting individual channels. If we want it to be more red, or take some of the, looks like there might be some blue showing up in that background. And you can even use a color sample if you want to get really precise with it. But the advantage, of course, is that we can adjust the brightness of the nebula without affecting the stars. And because it's above the corrections just go along for the ride. So let's talk about a different way of correcting these. And I'm just going to get rid of this adjustment layer, and I'm just going to turn off the healing layer and get back to where we started, where we have just the starless layer and then the stars, and I'll turn the star layer off as well. I mentioned earlier that some of these dust motes are brighter than the surrounding area and some are darker. And there's another way we can approach this that is maybe not quite as quick as using the healing brush, but when you have underlying details that you don't want to destroy, it's a better way to approach it, because sometimes it's just a bright spot, but in fact there's still detail there. So let's add another blank layer. We're going to start here, and let's start with the ones that are brighter than the background. And basically what I want to do is use my brush tool. So you can tap B for the brush tool, or you can choose it from the tool bar over here. And much like you do with the clone stamp or the healing brush, I can hold the alternate key and I get this color picker, and then I can choose by just clicking somewhere in the image, I can choose that color for the brush foreground color. So now if I were to paint with that color over this area, and I'm at about 60% opacity, so I may have to go over it a couple times, I can paint it the same color as the background. And you know, that's kind of nice, but there may be other details there that we don't want to obliterate, and we want it making it just a kind of a flat color. One technique I can use is to change the blending mode of this layer. Instead of normal, I can change it to darken blending mode. And what that is going to do then is it's going to use whatever I paint on this layer to darken what's in the background, but it won't lighten anything. So let's just erase this and start over. Well, in fact, let's just delete the whole layer. So I'll add a blank layer, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in darken blending mode. And with the brush tool, I'm going to again target a dark color that's right by this dust mote, and then just gradually start painting in and blend that into the background. And if there are darker details here, they won't be affected. And if it's darker in some areas than others, I can sample from different spots. I might do the same thing down here. This is an area that is darker surrounding the dust mote, so I can use this technique to lighten that area. And I can even use it around some of these star halos if I want. Here's another one over here on the left side. That was a little bit too aggressive, so I'm going to Control Z, that would be Command Z on a Mac to undo. I'm going to grab a new sample point here. The sample I was using was still a little bit too dark. And we've got some over here. It's always a good idea to get a fresh sample so that you're painting with something that matches the background. And notice that some of this area is darker than what's behind it. We can use the same technique, but just instead of on a layer that's darkening, we'll use a layer that's lightening. So I'll add another new layer. Rather than darken blending mode, I'm going to put this in lighten blending mode. And I should probably double click on the layer name and change the name to lighten so that I can remember which is which. But now, click and paint here, and it's going to only lighten what's there. So I will use the lighten layer to deal with areas that are too dark. For instance, here it's and if we need to, we can work back and forth between the paintbrush and the for darkening and lightening. And we can use this technique to hide these dust motes where the dust mote is lighter than what's behind it. So those are the kind of the general approach, using either a lighten area, a lighten layer, or a darken layer, and just painting with a somewhat low opacity and building it up gradually. And that will work real nicely on a in areas where you have some underlying detail. But if you have stars in the image, let's switch to this image. For the case where we want to lighten an area that's too dark, for instance, up here at the top, let's just zoom in. This layer has not only the nebulosity, but also the stars. So if I just paint on this layer, I'm not only painting over the background, but I'm also painting over the stars. Now, since I was using the brush here to lighten this area, the stars are already brighter than that area. So if I put this layer into lighten blending mode, we get the same result we did earlier, with the added benefit that I'm not painting over stars. And if I turn this on and off, you can see all the stars are still there. They didn't get painted over. So any place where the dust mote is darker than the surrounding area, using a layer in lighten blending mode will let you hide that little dust mote without affecting the underlying stars. So that works really nicely. What happens though when it's the opposite case? Here, the dust mote is brighter than the area behind it. If I add a darken layer, and let's put it in darken blending mode, and again, I'll change the name to darken so that I can keep track of the layers. Now, if I paint with that darker brush, it works to hide the dust mote, but you'll notice I'm also hiding the stars because the stars are brighter than that underlying dust mote. So there's a technique to deal with that, and what we want to do is tell this layer that we want to darken everything below it, but we only want to darken things that are already kind of dark, and we don't want to darken things that are already bright. And the way we do that is by going to the advanced blending options. And you can get to that through the layer style blending options, or you can just double click on the layer to the right of the layer name, and that will bring up this layer style, and typically it will come up to the blending options tab. If it would happen to come up to one of these others, just click on the blending options at the top. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you've seen me use this before. And it has some blend if sliders down here. And what we want to do is target the lower one, which based on the underlying layer. If the underlying layer is bright, we want to hide what's on this layer. And to do that, we'll grab this triangle on the right-hand side, and we'll start to slide it in. And as I slide it in, watch the stars over here. As I start to slide this in, you see the stars come back out. And at some point, if we go too far, then we start losing our correction. So we want to find a position kind of somewhere in the middle, and we can fine tune the position of this slider by holding the alternate key or option on a Mac. Click on that triangle, and that will split it into kind of a left and a right, and then you can really fine tune since we're using the whites slider, the one on the right is the coarse adjustment, and then the one on the left in the inside would be the kind of a ramp or the fine adjustment. So in this way, we're still using the magic of darken blending mode, but we're not affecting the stars. The stars are still shining through because of that advanced blending option. So we can use that technique, and just like we did on a starless layer, we can darken this background layer without affecting the stars and without changing the image. So that's what I wanted to show today. It's pretty straightforward. There are other techniques you could use, such as burning and dodging, to even more precisely target those areas. I think I've shown that in earlier videos, but that's probably a topic for another time. So this is the easy way to approach it, just with a layer in lighten blending mode that will only lighten things that you paint over, in a layer that's in only darken blending mode, so it will only darken things that are below. And then we used the advanced blending options slider to fine tune so that we don't affect the stars, we only affect the nebulosity. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below. If you like content like that, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you click the notifications, then you'll also be notified whenever I post a new video. So with that, I hope you have a great day today and an even better night tonight under a clear, dark sky. Thanks.